What's up, guys? Chimp here with another market update, and I haven't published one in close to a week, and quite a lot has changed in the market, and so let's go over it. I'll give my thoughts, and we'll go from there. So, for anyone who's been following me in ZooCap, basically, I've been, and you've been watching my videos, I've been pretty bearish for the longest of times. I ended up covering my Bitcoin short a little bit below 109. Covered my Farcoin short around 60 cents, covered my hype short around 41.7. And initially I covered my Bitcoin short, my Fartcoin short. Actually, sorry, initially I covered my Fartcoin short, went long Fartcoin, and then I covered my Bitcoin short, left the hype open, and then ultimately I covered the hype as well. And since then I basically put on a Bitcoin long around like 109.5. Those are my two positions right now, and so I'll talk a little about what I'm thinking about for the market, and then we can go from there. So Bitcoin's at about 111.7, and let's just first look to see what sort of the carnage was from this move and where we are from like a leverage perspective. So I'm just gonna delete this aggregated open interest. I'm gonna look at the global. So I've been talking a lot about this global open interest number. When it gets too high, the market just seems to flush. You can see it like, gets close to 110, the market just flushes out, right? The last three times. And so we ended up getting that again. And open interest went from like a high of, I want to say like 114, 115, all the way down to like 94. And right now it's sitting around 98 after this pump. So before the pump, it was around 95. Now it's at 98. So look, on the conservative side, about 15 billion in open interest has come out of the market. And so the question is like, what happens next? And one of the reasons I covered my short was maybe it's intuition, maybe it's something else. There's this long-term trend line. I don't think you should buy much into this, to be honest, but it's there. But my thought process was, I thought that if we wiped out enough open interest, we should get a mechanical bounce above 107. Now, why 107? 107 is the prior low, and typically, like in these sorts of situations, you get some amount of front running, which is what we got, right? The market sort of front ran it, compressed, and popped. Another thing that I was seeing, and we can't see it now because these guys got popped, but if you looked at Hyperliquid, when we got down to sub 110, you started getting a lot of really degenerate shorts that came into the market. So, at 115, 116, 117, you had these like big pockets of long liquidations that were sitting there at 114, at 112, at 110, right? And you ended up sort of getting the reverse. Like you got all these sort of apes that were like uber shorting into the market, and some of those guys have gotten popped, right? There was one guy who was short 1,200 Bitcoin, he got liquidated. There's another guy who was like cross shorting, who was up $20 million and ended up giving up all his gains. In fact, let me see if I can pull that guy up. In a couple of days since I tape up, but all right. All right, so take a look at this guy. Oh man, looks like he's this is the guy who was short. He looked like this guy went like Ponzi short, right? He made 20 mil. And again, like the greed of man, right? So now he's at minus 3 mil all the time. So he lost 21 million PNL. He still got some shorts open. So started seeing these guys. Obviously, he had way more positions on. He's like de-risked a lot of them. Flash gotten liquidated. And so I figured, okay, like from a mechanical perspective, I think a bounce kind of makes sense. So where do we sit right now? What do I think the market's going to do? Where are the risks? So let's take a look at the lick maps first. I think that's kind of interesting. And in terms of like my specific like Fartcoin position, I'll publish a video about it a little bit later. It could be a total bust, but I'll publish a video about it at some point to talk about it more in depth. But first of all, like let's look at the long and short side. You still have a huge cluster of long liquidations. I can scroll down actually. sitting right below the lows, right? So I talked about that 107. Once you go right below 107, you start hitting a ton of long liquidation. So you have a pretty big bounty in terms of apes to hunt under that low. And so I do think 107 gets swiped at some point. I don't know if it's, tomorrow or next week. I think it will get swiped at some point. But on the flip side, on the short side, you still have like some of these short apes that have liquidations pretty close to the price. And actually, you have this one huge guy with a lick at 117.5. He's short, I think, 2,000 Bitcoin. So you do have some bounties now on the short side that could get hunted. And that is a different situation than what it was in the past, right? Like, I've had videos where I've been bearish and I show you the lick maps, and like the short side licks are like $10,000 away. That's not the case right now. You look like plus minus like $2,000 for the price. Actually, it's shorts that are more vulnerable. And so I think there's a pretty good chance that we end up going up and hunting a few more of these apes. It might not happen. Maybe the short squeeze that we got from 109 to 112 was it. That's very possible. And to show you why, like, again, that 107 level probably gets hit, like, I want to show you ETH, right? ETH has, again, a mega pocket of licks, sort of sitting around 35, 3,600, that's sort of waiting to get tapped. And so at some point, these guys probably get tapped. I want to show Farcoin too, because I think you're starting to get these accounts that have liquidations, like, that are so short and have liquidations so close to price that actually they're sort of becoming bounties. So, like, there's this guy with a lick, I don't know if it was at 90 cents or $1. We'll look at the account in a second. Short almost 20, I think 26 million Farcoin. So there's also that. I just want to show you a couple of traders. We already looked at this guy. Actually, no, we didn't look at this guy. So here's like one guy, right? Like cross short a bunch of crap. Obviously, he has a bunch of money in his spot account, so he could theoretically like add money and raise his liquidation prices. This is the main mega whale, right? Like his lick right now is at 107, and this guy's been slowly adding money. If you look at his account, like he had 3 million, etc. But he short a lot of crap, right? So if you get like any small alt season, like this guy probably gets popped. So I don't know whether this is a big enough bounty to get hunted, but this is one of the reasons why I went long Farcoin. Like seeing accounts like this that have just been piling into this trade and have been chilling for the most part. But I think they provide an interesting bounty to the market. So what's my thought process with the market at 112, and where do I think we could potentially be heading? So obviously one possibility is that we just like this was it. We end up sort of melting back down, and then we end up just dumping out. I think that's a possibility. Do I think it's the most likely? Not. I don't think so. This is my best guess as to what happens, and I could be wrong. So when we look at the market, we have two big bounties to hunt. One is at 117.5, and one is like sort of at 105.5, right? There's a ton of longs to hunt here. There's a couple shorts to hunt here. I'm pretty sure we're going to end up hunting these at some point. My base case, and by the way, we have a couple, we have a decent amount of shorts sort of like at that 113 to 114 area. So when we think about like quote unquote like licked pockets, and this is just one exchange, so it doesn't necessarily, you should have put like a complete weight into this. But when you think about when I think about the market, a couple things. First of all, a lot of open interest came out. So in terms of what I would like to see, I would like to see at least a couple more days, if not a week more of chop. Meaning, hey, we sit here, maybe we even grind higher a bit, right? Maybe it's something like this. We grind higher. Like, what would make me be like, okay, it's time for me to short, like, time to de-risk, time to get the hell out, time to short immediately? I mean, someone could make an argument that it's time to do it now, actually, given that we just had a short squeeze. What I would, if the following, I would be like ultra bearish would be, you get a situation where you get some chop, maybe if the market even floats up a bit, you start getting alts starting to pump like crazy again, and more specifically, you get global open interest that pops back up. Now, it doesn't have to come back to the same highs, but maybe it just has a bit of a pop, right? Maybe people get a little bit more excited, for some reason or another, and it gets hunted out again. So those would be like some of the sort of indicators that I'd be looking for. Sort of similar to here, right? Like when you're going down and in this case, open interest just popped immediately, right? And it made a lower high, but it basically was telling you like, hey, people are just getting like leveraging up, and that's a cause for concern. So in terms of like what I'm going to be looking for, that's something I'm going to be looking for. Uh, I still think the market also has a buyer's problem still. So I think there's a couple risks on the bearish side still. So one of them is the stock market, right? So the stock market's gone up, it's gone down. It seems like when it's been going up, the market doesn't really go up much, but it ends up going down significantly. I think that could pose one downside risk. The second one is the lack of buyers, and I still don't know where the mega buying comes from, right? Because Sailor's sort of out of money. We'll see if Metaplanet deployed their second tranche or not. But for the most part, these treasuries are tapped, right? Like they're cooked. They're not going to be buying anymore. And so you sort of need external capital to come in and start to buy. And I think that's another big problem. So I guess to summarize, and what happens if we do run 107? It's anyone's guess. I still think this open interest is a risk. Like there's still a lot of open interest in this market. But we also have to account for the fact that a lot of these treasuries have, to some degree, absorbed like selling supply. So I think if we run these lows, we sort of reevaluate. So I guess what's my thought process? We're probably going to run 107 at some point. Do I think it's in the next day or two? I think it's unlikely. Do I think it could happen in a week or two? Yes. What would be the signs I would look for that it's imminent? It would be like a choppy market, maybe a slight grind up, alt's going crazy, open interest ramping back up. Those would be the main things that I would be looking for. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on the market. Obviously, I'm not in any shorts anymore. In fact, I'm in some margin longs. And I'm going to go from there. So ultimately, we'll see what happens. By the way, if you want to see my trades in real time, I have a Discord link posted below, and I post all my trades there for free. So anyways, I'll be keeping an eye on the market. I think there's a lot more volatility coming. And ultimately, I think there's going to be money to be made as long as you're nimble and quick and willing to change bias and change positioning as necessary. So that being said, appreciate it, guys. And thank you for listening, and take care, everyone.